The enigma surrounding Ricky Nelson has been resolved. That is not good. The birth of Ricky Nelson on May 8, 1940. Eric Hilliard Nelson was in New Jersey's teen, the child of Azie and Harriet Nelson, and too well known among the performers of the era. Ricky was essentially born into the entertainment industry. From an early age, he was enmeshed in the entertainment industry, showing on the long inning with his family radio and, subsequently, television shows. The television program, Adventures of Azie and Harriet, that documented the daily activities of the Nelson family and turned into a mainstay of American homes during the 1950s until the early 1960s. Growing up in front of Ricky's magnetism, millions of viewers, his inherent talent and good looks made him a crowd favorite right away. However, Nelson, in contrast to many other young actors, successfully escaped the limiting picture of a sitcom family star by pursuing an exceptionally prosperous musical career profession. When rock and roll was first still viewed as contentious, by elder Ricky Nelson became one of those generations. Among its most esteemed and durable numbers, his first single was recorded, 1957, I'm Walking, a rendition of the hit song Fats Dominoes, and it soared to the top of the charts in no time. This debut not only signaled the start of his concurrent work as a rock star and role performer, but also made him known as a self-made teenage idol. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, in the 1960s, Ricky Nelson kept accumulating hit after hit, including Hello Mary, Poor Little Fool, Traveling Man Lou, It's Late, and The Town is Lonely. His mellow, melodious voice and crisp visuals helped increase the accessibility of rock music to general audiences, and he received a loyal following. He was one of the first young celebrities to regularly show up on national rock music. Was first introduced to millions of Americans make a living rooms, an occurrence that predicted the impact of subsequent actions, such as the Beatles. He had already sold at the age of 21 millions of documents and had merged into one among the best-selling male solo performers of his time. However, the career of Ricky Nelson was not without difficulties. As melodic in the middle of the 1960s, tastes started to change. Nelson found it difficult to hold his position, the highest on the charts. Instead of adapt to shifting fashions, he decided to develop creatively, exploring a deeper, sophisticated sound of country rock. This action culminated in the Stones' creation. Canyon Band, an organization that would assist, pioneered the style of country rock, eventually adopted by musicians such as the Eagles. 1972 saw him publish the contemplative single Garden Party, which turned become a huge comeback hit, motivated by the unsatisfactory response he got at a concert in Madison Square Garden, where only his older hits were desired by the crowd. The song served as an anthem of defiance regarding integrity as an artist and individual genuineness. It was a potent message. Not everyone can be pleased, therefore you must satisfy yourself. In addition to his outstanding achievements as a Ricky Nelson, the recording artist carved, leaving a lasting impression on the globe of television and movies, displaying his broad range of abilities as an actor and performer. His cinematic career started in 1952 with The Playful Family. Here Come the Nelsons is a comedy movie that made use of his well-known family's popularity. A year later, Nelson made a tiny yet noteworthy part in The Tale of Three Loves, 1953, an MGM project that was overseen by the Vincente Minnelli, the legend. In this, Nelson played a younger version in the movie of the persona of Farley Grewers, showcasing his early talent for making characters come to life on the large screen. Nelson's popularity skyrocketed as via his musical career and The Adventures of Azie television series and Harriet, his abilities were noticed. Of prominent filmmakers in Hollywood, among the most pivotal events in 1959, a cinematic career began, when renowned filmmaker Howard Hawks portrayed him in the classic as a gunslinger, Rio Bravo in the West. Starring next to legends Dean Martin and John Wayne, Nelson's contribution brought new vitality to the Hawks himself, gave credit to the movie. The key to Nelson's magnetic presence, part of the film's remarkable box office performance, office achievement. Nelson went on to enhance his performing career by providing the screen with well-known celebrities. In 1960, he featured with the vivacious Jack in the Army's Most Ridiculous Ship, Lemon, a humorous war movie that made enough fame to motivate a television series. However, Nelson did not recast his part for the theater, constantly willing to try out different jobs. He appeared as a guest on programs such as the General Electric Theater, where his The Wishbook episode featured. His acting extends beyond his fame as a musician. In 1965, Nelson played the main character in Love, the romantic comedy Kisses, which was a unique familial partnership that was written and directed by Azie Nelson, his father. The Jack Kelly was also in the movie, and it permitted Ricky to combine his acting skills, his charisma and musical abilities, putting together an emotional and enjoyable feature. Nelson's TV appearances turned into a consistent aspect of his work throughout late 1960s and early 1970s. He depicted the Jesse James, the notorious outlaw, in an Hondo episode, showed up in the Western, The Over the Hill, A Nostalgic Film Gang, 1969, Walter Brennan, a veteran, and Pat O'Brien, and kept making appearances in well-known programs such as Out, San Francisco's Streets, Owen Marshall, a legal counselor, Petro Kelly, and The Tales Twist. One especially noteworthy cameo appeared on Nancy Drew of the Hardy Boys Mystery, in which Nelson performed the Tony Eagle as a character. The show doesn't showcase not just his acting, but also showcased his vocal abilities as he played a number of his well-known hits, pleasing his music's admirers as well as acting. Additionally, Nelson's presence adorned the cherished Love Boat, adding to his extensive collection of varied television roles. As his profession developed in the 1980s, Nelson kept taking supporting parts in television films like the teen comedy High and 3 on a Date 1983, School USA, demonstrating that his timeless charm and his talent put him in high demand throughout several platforms for entertainment. Regardless of the size of the screen, the acting career of Ricky Nelson was a lively and dramatic expansion of his diverse legacy of art. While he was Ricky Nelson's adolescence turned into one of the most popular teen idols in America, winning over millions of hearts with his crisp appearance, soothing voice, and boyish charm. Such notoriety came with fervent interest from supporters and the media, so it was expected that he won the love of numerous young women. Like the majority of teenagers, Ricky was eager to investigate love partnerships, and he had several relationships with girls during these early years, but even so, despite his fame and self-reliance, Ricky's Harriet Nelson, her mother, kept a substantial impact on his personal life. Harriet served as more than just a mentor, mother figure, as well as his co-star in the long-running television in the family series Azzy's Adventures and Harriet. She was adamant about propriety, decorum, and the significance of preserving a decent public picture, particularly in the light of the spotlight of Hollywood. Harriet rejected a large number of the young ladies Ricky was seen carrying or bringing home, frequently feeling as though they didn't fulfill the expectations she had for her son. She was worried about more than just class or manners, but especially regarding Ricky's professional path. She thought the main emphasis should continue to be on creating an enduring and well-respected musical career, and taking action instead than getting distracted by short-lived love affairs. Her tendency to be protective might have resulted from a mother's instinct and her profound comprehension of how quickly a young person could be derailed by fame, the life of a star. Ricky, although frequently honoring his mother's desires, felt the tension between individual preferences as well as professional standards. This conflict kept coming up in his youth and the first few years of adulthood, but in the end, Ricky fell in love with a young lady who appeared to, with the consent of Harriet, Kristen Harmon. In April, the couple was married, 1963, at a well-reported wedding that brought together two well-known American families. Chris was Heisman's daughter, football player Tom Harmon, a trophy winner, and Elise Knox, an actress from the 1940s. The Harmons had been pals with the Nelsons, and it was believed that the union was an attractive and organic fit. Two, coming or the offspring of Hollywood royalty, together in what a lot of fans thought was a fairy tale nuptials. Both families had in common a strong bond via amusement and public life, as well as this union represented, in many respects, an extension of their heritage. Chris and Ricky continued to become parents to 4 children together. There, Tracy Christine Nelson, the firstborn, carried on her father's legacy and became an actress and gained notoriety for oneself with television roles and movie, including the father series The Mysteries of Dowling. Afterwards, Chris provided. Gunnar Eric Nelson gave birth to twin sons, and Nelson, Matthew Gay, who inherited the musical prowess of their father and charm. The twins accomplished this in the early 1990s. Their rock band's commercial success. Nelson was the first family to act to create 3 generations in history of musicians. Can't Live, one of their hits Without Your Adoration and Love, topped the 1990 Billboard charts. The Sam Hilliard, the couple's youngest child, Nelson, who was named after Ricky's A.Z. Nelson, father, whose middle name was Hilliard, and he also entered the arts, but he mostly avoided of the spotlight in contrast to his siblings. In spite of the appearance of a Chris and Ricky's ideal family, the difficulties in marriage grew. As the years went by, the tensions became to increase after the birth of their final child, as lifestyle variations, personal development, and emotional detachment started to increase the distance between them. Ricky's tour itinerary and intention to revitalize his singing career frequently maintained his traveling, but Chris, allegedly, struggled to fulfill the obligations and the demands of family life. There were, moreover, reports of adultery and rising emotional What once seemed to be an opulent combination between 2 well-known people slowly fell apart. In private, burdened by personal problems and competing priorities, the relationship between the couple soured. Further times in the late 1970s and early 1980s, which resulted in a split and ultimately to a drawn-out and excruciating dispute in court for custody, money, and public perception. Their separation was completed in December 1982, signaling the conclusion of over 2 decades. Lengthy union. However, the law of the proceedings were very draining for both Chris and Ricky still stayed committed to their kids, making an effort to preserve for them a feeling of stability despite the turmoil in the family. Ricky, in specifically, was profoundly impacted by the dissolution of the union, and it impacted some of the more depressing motifs in his subsequent compositions. For many years, admirers of rock, teen idols, and Ricky Nelson, and role pioneer, as well as a TV personality, have conjectured regarding the events surrounding his unfortunate and premature demise. Although some elements were identified early on, numerous important questions hung on. Was that a mechanical device malfunction that resulted in the aircraft crash that killed him? Was there anything further evil behind what happened in that ill-fated flight on the 31st of December 1985? Over time, the enigmas surrounding Nelson's passing became the focus of deep interest and sadness interest. Now, following years of inquiry, professional evaluation, and recently revealed witness accounts and insiders, the complete tale has at last come into focus, and what it shows is not at all consoling. In the center of the DC-3 plane that is the source of mystery, Ricky was flying in with his band, traveling to a performance on New Year's Eve in Dallas, Texas. According to early reports, that might be a mechanical problem pertaining to a broken heater, or a fire was started by an electrical fault on board, causing the collision close to Dallas, Texas. In Airborne, the aircraft caught fire, and even though the 2 pilots, miraculously, Ricky Nelson, his fiancée, survived, Helen Blair, and the 5 members of the band, they died in the fire. Following the catastrophe, gossip started to circulate. Drug use is blamed by some, while others point fingers at poor upkeep, while others made sabotage-related conjectures, or covert foul play. For many years, the reason was obscured by official uncertainty. The National Transportation, the Safety Board, ultimately decided that the TOT was where the fire started, most likely because to a broken heating system, but they was unable to pinpoint the precise ignition origin. Meanwhile, conjecture was rampant, both among fans and in tabloids. Sounds of cocaine, freebasing based on reports that drug-related items had been discovered at the scene fostered a more sinister story that many thought it unjustly tarnished Nelson's picture. Nevertheless, toxicological reports discovered Nelson has no alcohol or narcotics in his system, because there was never any hard proof that connected the fire to drug usage. However, the fog of 4 decades, ambiguity persisted, leaving his family with an open wound, and fans are left with a lingering question mark. What were a sequence that ultimately brought resolution of research discoveries made feasible by aviation tenacity, forensic investigators, historians, and reporters who were committed to find out the truth. Previously disregarded technical documents, along with fresh conversations with mechanics in the aircraft industry and the pilots that survived, disclosed a lot more unsettling and distinct image. The airplane, a Douglas from World War II DC-3, had not been properly cared for and was functioning in a dubious safety circumstances. Even though they are aware of recurring issues with the heater system, issues that were identified and even voiced concerns on the prior flights, the pilots of the aircraft did not give them the proper attention. Even more damningly, in a sense, the heater had been jury-rigged. That turned it into a ticking time bomb. Temporary fixes that weren't compliant in accordance with aircraft safety regulations. The deheater was situated directly below the cabin floorboards that are near combustible materials. Additionally, when it broke, it caused a fire while in the air. That quickly caused smoke to flood the cabin, and poisonous gases. The absence of an onboard fire retardant and fire extinguisher insulation provided the travelers with no chance. Ricky Nelson and the others probably passed away from smoke inhalation prior to the crash landing. As stated by according to forensic reports, the pilots were able to escape via the windows of the cockpit, but it was too much for everyone in the cabin. Late, the most horrifying discovery was not just because the fire might have been avoided, but that those in charge, because the plane was aware of its danger and let it fly. In any case, in retrospect, the flight was a disaster. Awaiting action. The last mystery, how a well-known person could pass away in such an avoidable catastrophe, was ultimately responded, but not in the manner that peace brings. Conclusion. Rather, it has sparked a new wave of anger and despair. The well-known performer, Ricky Nelson, who had developed from a child star to a singer legend, not due to personal circumstances or fate, failure due to human carelessness and systematic supervision. The truth was now revealed. Bear is difficult to accept. It depicts an unpleasant depiction of a preventable catastrophe and serves as a reminder that even iconic are at risk when those assigned to they are not safe. The work of Ricky Nelson, a cultural figure's legacy persists, but his death's circumstances act as a sobering warning, a reminder that when mysteries are eventually resolved, don't always provide solace. Occasionally, they just make the disaster worse.